enjoy these weddings on the beach. Have you done any before? I think people are nervous when I do things for the first time. I said, no, I've done one other. But I told them, the problem on the beach is it's almost impossible to hear. Musicians have a terrible time, again, because you can't hear, and they have a hard time hearing each other because of the background noise. And it's just hard to do church. It's too distracting. It's too pretty. But it was beautiful last night. And I found myself wondering if maybe that isn't a good parable for the kind of situation the church finds it in at the beginning of the 21st century. That there's so much in society now, and it just distracts us from being the church, from doing what Christ has called us to do. And today we find Jesus in the Gospels telling a parable about a vineyard, and it's really about the church. It's about what are we called to be, what are we called to do, what are we called to produce. Now the first thing to understand about this is we keep hearing about the vineyard, the vineyard, the vineyard. I will sing for the one I love, a song about his vineyard. And you may find yourself going, what is all this stuff about grapevine? The vineyard is a symbol of Israel. This is the symbol of the nation. That in America we might talk about the Statue of Liberty. We might talk about Mom, baseball, the girl next door. But in Israel, they talked about the vineyard. And once you understand that, then you understand that when Jesus starts talking about the vineyard, he's talking about Israel. And what is Israel called to be? What is Israel called to do? Well, hold on to that for just a moment while I tell you about a church meeting. Now, church meetings can be really boring, really tedious. And but once there was a church meeting where the wealthiest member of the congregation stood up and explained to everyone about his Christian faith. And he told how, as a young man, he had gone to a church meeting one night, and it was the very night that he had received his first paycheck. He'd earned $1, and he was terribly, terribly proud. And here he was as a millionaire looking back and realizing this church meeting was one of the turning points in his life. And at that church meeting, a missionary was present. And the missionary told about his work overseas, and the pastor of the congregation was so pleased to have this missionary that when it came time for the offering plate to be passed around, the pastor said, now look, all the money we collect tonight is going to the missionary for his wonderful work overseas. And the millionaire said, you know, as a young man, here I was with my first paycheck, my first whole dollar that I had earned. And I knew I could not take change out of that offering plate when it came around. He said, so I had a decision to make. I had to give it all, or I wasn't going to be able to give anything. So when the plate came around, I put it all in the plate. I put it all in the plate. And he said, God blessed that. And God helped me become a millionaire. And when he finished telling his story about putting it all in the plate, the room was silent. And he went and he sat down in a pew, and it was silent for a long time, and there was a little lady sitting behind him. And she leaned forward and she whispered in his ear, I dare you to do it again. Well, now, I dare you to do it again. You would probably notice that nobody ever dared Jesus to do it again. Because every time Jesus lays it all on the line. There's nothing about Jesus that is halfway. He puts it all on the line. And in today's reading, we find him back in Jerusalem. Now, if you were looking at your Bibles, you would notice that this business of the unfaithful tenants, this is the parable at the end of the 21st chapter. But earlier in the 21st chapter, Jesus cleans out the temple. He drives out all the money changers. And then he talks about a withered, then he curses the fig tree that bears no fruit. And all of this stuff is leading up to this parable about these unfaithful tenants. He's just cleansed the temple. And this has not endeared him to the political establishment at all. Why, those people in the White House are really ready to get him. And it doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans, they're always Pharisees, and they're really going to get that guy. And feelings are running really strong because that guy is stirring up trouble and we don't like it. And some of the Pharisees are talking about having him killed. So Jesus tells them a parable about a landowner who planted a vineyard. And he's telling this parable against them. Now that takes a lot of guts. That takes a lot of guts. A landowner had a vineyard. He planted a wall around it. He dug a wine press and built a watchtower. Then he rented that vineyard out to some farmers and went away on a long journey. There really wasn't much to do for the landowners except to gather the harvest. That's how well prepared this vineyard was. And when the harvest time came, the landowner sent his servants to collect the rent. It was the way things were done. Incredibly, the tenants seized the servants. They beat one, kill another, and stone a third. The landowner was deeply wounded and surprised. He sent more servants to collect some of the harvest for the rent, and the tenants treated them the same way. Last of all, the landowner sent his son. They will respect my son, he said, but they did not. When the tenants saw the son, they said to each other, this is the heir. Let's kill him and take his inheritance. So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. And then Jesus asked those who were listening, therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants?